Look at him, eating whatever he wants, never gaining a pound. While I'm stuck with the boring special and can't lose an ounce.
How's your lunch, man?
Amazing. Yours?
So good.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Cool, buddy.
Weight loss isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. The affordable GLP-1 source that can fix your frustration with food.
So, same time next week?
No!
Definitely.
And your friends. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
U.S. elections. I want to ask you about U.S. elections because it seems a lot of focus is on the upcoming midterm election and then beyond. We've seen Donald Trump and those who are doing the dirty work of Donald Trump, I'd say. I'm talking about the Tulsi Gabbards of the world, the Kash Patels of the world. We're seeing them move against Fulton County. Fulton County and the election officials there just had their first meeting since the raid of their offices, during which they took 700 boxes of voter tabulated material. Even voting machines were seized. Speak to where we are on this and how you see the growing encroachment of this government on the U.S. elections.
I'm deeply concerned, and I make no bones about it. Donald Trump is determined to federalize elections. There is a bill that passed the House. It's got 50 votes in the Senate, but it will not be implemented.
You're talking about the SAVE Act,
Save
right?
America
As
Act,
it's called,
right?
yeah.
And this is appalling. It's a poll tax all over again. It's limiting the right to vote. And the only reason that they're doing it is because they're afraid of losing. And
Remind everybody what a poll tax was.
Yeah, in order to vote, you had to pay a poll. You had to pay a tax, rather. And
it was a way of doing what?
To prevent African Americans from voting in the South. And indeed, there was a literacy test as well. And all I can tell you is that what the Trump administration is doing is Jim Crow all over again. It is.
These are voter suppression techniques, you're saying, that have been used
Absolutely.
through history. Okay.
What do you need me for? You've got all the answers, but you're right.
So this one is what, John? I mean, you can speak to some of the specifics. I mean, they want voter ID of one sort or another.
They want to have no voting after the midnight deadline. I mean, it is one of the most ridiculous things, and it's not going to pass. Everybody has to understand that. And if I were the Democrats, I would make it a major issue in the upcoming election, because if the Republicans don't have the votes in the House and Senate, they have the votes in the House, but they won't in the Senate, it'll be stopped cold. But let me tell you, the insidious way in which Donald Trump and the Justice Department are now proceeding in terms of this kind of action to limit voting is something that is pernicious. It has to be stopped. What I'm disturbed about more than anything else is mail-in voting. Do you understand that here in California, for instance, almost all of it's mail-in voting? The days when I would go with my wife and my kids to vote together and have a picture taken, those days are over. Everybody votes by mail.
And I think that Trump, aware of that, sort of sees the move against mail-in voting, and Rothman is so right. They've really targeted mail-in voting, or at least Trump has. He sees it as striking out against states like California. But the reality is, and you know this so well, John, that Republicans are quietly, and some of them not so quietly, defending mail-in voting. It's like, hey, dude, that's really old school. As usual, Trump is trapped in the past. Now, his own constituencies, or the GOP constituencies, they do use mail-in voting.
Yes, and rightly so, as do the Democrats, as do all Americans. Most people don't go to the polls, but the simple fact is what the Republicans are trying to do and what Donald Trump and his Justice Department are trying to do, and we'll get to Pam Bondi, I know, before the end of this segment, is to limit our ability to vote. And that would be a disaster for American democracy. So my view is that this kind of voter suppression has to stop. We have to do everything we can to fight it. And thank God we will have the opportunity to vote in November and get the rascals out.
Well, President Donald Trump is saying that voter ID requirements will be in place for this year's midterm elections, regardless of congressional approval.
Yeah, he can issue an executive order, which is what he actually did the other day, and you can Google it. He issued an executive order on voting, but it doesn't have any binding authority. And that's the thing that also has to be challenged. This is a president who is ruled by executive order. And that, to me, is despicable, because the whole point is to have a balance of power. Congress is a co-equal branch of government. The court's a co-equal branch of government.
Well, increasingly, Presidents Biden did the same thing. Obama did that. I mean, there's a flex going on in the executive. No, of course, nothing on this scale. But I'm just saying that what's happened is, I would suggest to you, respectfully, U.S. government has started to list to one side, and that's the executive branch. And since Congress is unable to really do much in this hyper-partisan environment, I'm not just this one today, but the one that preceded this administration as well, the chief executive, the president, relies on executive orders to get stuff done that is agenda-related.
And we have to fight it with everything we have. It was one thing when President Eisenhower issued an executive order in relation to integrating Little Rock schools, which he did by invoking the Insurrection Act. But what Donald Trump is doing is appalling. It is anti-democratic, small d. And so, all we can do is raise our voices and be assured that the machinery of the Democratic Party, legally, they're investing a lot of money in these kinds of challenges, and we can only hope that they succeed. But more important, that in November, in a free and fair election, the American people return control of the House of Representatives to the Democrats. And I believe there's even a shot in the United States Senate. So, and we're watching.
But more and more people are share your view. There will be voter ID. Let me just read his post. There will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not. And he said that he searched the depths of legal arguments on the issue. I don't think he's not searched the depths of any issue ever in his life, and will be presenting an irrefutable argument, a legal argument, quote, in the near future.
But don't forget,
there is no legal argument. He said if we can't get through Congress what we want done, there are legal reasons why this scam is not permitted, and he's saying we will get this done one way or another.
Mark, same thing when he says the 2020 election was stolen. I mean, this man is, I have to tell you, I don't think he's fit to be president of the United States. And I know there are people listening to the sound of your voice and mine who defend Donald Trump. But we have never had a president try to use such excessive presidential authority. And I believe it will be stopped. It'll be stopped by Congress. It'll be stopped by the courts. I'm still waiting patiently for the Supreme Court to step in on the tariff question.
Well, let's just, before you get to tariffs, I just want to get you, because you are a scholar in this area, take me through the legislative process. This bill, which, as you say, is so pernicious, it would take away the vote from so many. It also, by the way, I know it's getting a lot of publicity, the voter ID part of it, but there is an administrative bureaucratic layer of demands that would go on to all the states that couldn't possibly be ramped up in time for the midterms. And by the way, they'd kick in before the midterm. They kick in right away, these administrative demands. And there's no money that is set aside in the bill to help with that bureaucratic infrastructure that they want. So they've created in this bill by design a kind of problem that is going to occur should the bill pass with the state elections. There just won't be enough time and there won't be enough money to get things organized. So, as I said, so take me, it passed the House. Take me to the Senate, because there are 50 votes in the Senate for it so far.
You need 60. You need
right,
60.
That's the point.
And he will not get 60 votes. And believe me when I tell you this, he can issue all the executive orders he wants. But when it comes to the actual law, it's not going to succeed. We will see in November, I am convinced, free and fair elections. And what the Republicans are trying to do now, in a desperate attempt to prevent the Democrats from taking control of the House and maybe even the Senate, we're going to talk about the Texas race in a few minutes, the Republicans actually could lose that seat in Texas because Cornyn and Paxton are going at it tooth and nail. And the Democrats, well, got a big boost, as you'll describe in just a moment when you talk about what happened the other night.
Yeah. Well, I'll go to Texas then, and the entire controversy that's swept into Texas. First of all, before I even get to the controversy, I'll just share a little something of what's happening in Texas now as a result of this administration. Okay, and that is that South Texas is being devastated by the Trump immigration policy. I mean, devastated. There are home builders there that are unable to do business because of their immigration raids there. And there are statements along these lines. South Texas will never be red again, said one person. It's a catastrophe down there. Construction executives have held multiple meetings over the last month with the White House and Congress to discuss how immigration busts on job sites and in communities are scaring away employees, making it more expensive to build homes in a market that's desperate for new supply. The affordability issue is on full display down there in Texas, as you know, John. And there's an electability argument. In other words, GOP leaders are saying, hey, we don't have any Hispanic support now. And so you've brought us economic ruin, and you've destroyed a constituency that was supporting us. So
that's
Texas
why the Democrats
is very much in play.
That's why the Democrats may well take the United States Senate seat in Texas, and why the Republicans are in a panic, and they should be in a panic. May I tell you, this isn't a Democratic or Republican issue. This is an American issue. What Donald Trump is trying to do is to subvert the American electoral process. And I challenge the Trump supporters who are listening to the sound of our voice. You know it and I know it. There is no political justification from an American point of view for what Donald Trump is trying to do. And he'll be stopped.
Now let's talk about the Talarico thing with Colbert being forced to keep Talarico off of his show. Talarico is running for Senate. Talarico's so good, and we identified him as someone who was so good a long time ago on this show, and one of the reasons we did is that he can speak the language of Christianity so well. He can speak the language of the best of Christianity, and he's able to tie it to the kind of social change that he promises he'll bring to the electorate, and he's also able to compare it to what's happening now, the sort of cruelty, brutality, and greed and corruption that defines this administration and regime in America. So he's an extremely effective speaker. So
and he may well win, and I think that's the key. He is on the way to winning the Democratic nomination. He will be the contender, and I believe if he wins the election, it'll be a major blow. Let me just say a word about Colbert. What he did was brave and true. What is happening at CBS News under Barry Weiss is shameful. And I hope everybody understands there is an attempt now to control not only CBS News, but the way interviews are done. And this is something that is absolutely intolerable. I want you to know.
Well, wait a minute. But, John, this is not CBS News. Colbert is a talk show, okay? So you're right about CBS News. But before you go on to that, I just want to concentrate on what happened here, because Colbert's interview show is an entertainment show. It's a talk show. And in the fair equal time rule, there is a specific carve out for shows like Colbert. So that's why this.
You're forgetting the most important thing of all. What Barry Weiss, who is now the director of CBS News, is doing. This is all interconnected. The Trump people are commanding it. And so I have to tell you, you and I were talk show hosts. I always tried to have balance on my show. And I always invited the opposition to come in. But the equal time provision doesn't apply. It applies to broadcast journalism, what we did when we were on KGO. It does not apply to this kind of medium, which
exactly. That's exactly the point. So, again, Talarico's the Democrat who's in a primary against Jasmine Crockett, who's, very, very good also. The Republicans would rather run against Crockett. They both poll very, very well, John. Both these candidates on the Democratic side, and they both poll well against the Republicans. So I want to play a little bit of, now this is post-Colbert. Talarico is on the stump. And again, this is just a little bit of him greeting a crowd post interview with Colbert. And I think that interview has been seen by 4 million people now, even though it went up to YouTube instead of being broadcast on CBS. Go ahead, Tony.
Last night, I filmed an interview with Stephen Colbert on The Late Show. And as you probably know by now, Trump's FCC colluded with corporate media executives at CBS to keep that interview off the air. But I think it's safe to say that their plan backfired. I think Donald Trump and his billionaire friends know that we're about to take back Texas. And these are the same people who ran against cancel culture. And now they're trying to control what we watch, what we say, what we read, And this is the most dangerous kind of cancel culture, the kind that comes from the top. They went after The View after I went on there. They went after Jimmy Kimmel for telling a joke they didn't like. They went after Stephen Colbert for telling the truth about Paramount's bribe to Donald Trump. Corporate media executives are selling out the First Amendment to curry favor with corrupt politicians. A threat to any of our First Amendment rights is a threat to all of our First Amendment rights.
This is very true. He speaks, I think, so eloquently about this and so sharply about it, John. And, it's happening everywhere. It's happening on Meta, yes. Facebook-owned social media platforms, talking about Instagram. I think it's happening here on YouTube. So there are fewer and fewer places now in America where dissent is tolerated. And this regime is showing all of the signs of the kind of authoritarianism that is tamping down dissent and ultimately cranking up the kind of moves that we saw against Colbert. And
there's a reaction. I was in my exercise class this morning, and one of the guys there, who is not notoriously generous with his contributions, said he immediately wrote a check to Talarico because he said, I was so angry by what happened. So I think that there is a backlash. It's setting in, and I think that's really going to be important. The idea, by the way, of Trump colluding with the FCC and giving orders to his chairman is precisely what we have to fight against. The whole
it's not an idea. I think it clearly happened. Brendan Carr is on a jihad, the same kind of jihad that Trump is on.
Let me point out
to stamp down and to stamp out any kind of dissent.
Which is the exact opposite, as you and I know, being in the broadcast industry, of what the FCC was designed to do. And Carr is a disgrace. So all I can say is let them continue pulling this kind of stuff, and there will be a backlash. And the ultimate backlash is what I'm waiting for, and that's what we will see in November.
I want to ask you about Iran in a moment, but before I do, I want to talk about Epstein. Now, Epstein's billionaire connection that really launched him, this Lex Wexner, he is testifying before Congress about the ties to Epstein. And the first go-around with the Attorney General speaking about the ties to Epstein was pretty clearly all evasion, right? She evaded every
Pam
question.
Bondi. Let's be clear. Let's call her what she is, Pam Bondi.
Yeah, well, you can play a little bit of basically what she had was a burn book. She had insults preloaded for each and every questioner that was likely to be an adversary. But beyond that, she was hyping Donald Trump in almost a comical way. It felt like a sketch or something. Every question, she just kept defaulting to President Trump is the greatest president. Here she is with Zoe Lofgren. Check it out.
So I think the credibility of the department in terms of complying with the act has been damaged.
May I answer?
Attorney General can respond.
I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure, this isn't a circus. This is a hearing.
Please.
Yeah,
she posted nothing.
This is the thing. It just goes to President Trump is the greatest president in American history.
The Dow has shattered 50,000 for the first time. This is crazy.
She kept going to the Dow thing, John. It was really almost embarrassing.
The Dow right now is over.
It is.
The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing.
Yeah, I mean, she referred to the Dow like 4 times. And
the Dow is over 50,000 right now.
She couldn't
S&P at almost 7,000.
She couldn't.
And the NASDAQ smashing records.
Couldn't quite land, stick the landing with her stuff, John. It seemed almost like watching a junior high kid who'd just been given some notes, try to work these notes into whatever prepared speech they had. But I wonder if you could comment on the Epstein file hearings and then the sort of political toxicity that might be associated with them.
Well, the Epstein files are toxic. Just take a look at what's happening in Europe over the Epstein files. One domino falling after another. The fact that Donald Trump has not yet had to answer questions is a tough one, because I believe that just as Bill and Hillary Clinton will testify shortly, Donald Trump should be compelled to testify shortly. No one is accusing him of sexual impropriety. There are allusions to things, but the important element here is he was a friend of Epstein's. They were close friends for a decade, and it's very clear they were close friends. Now, is guilt by association enough? Well, depends who you talk to. But the simple truth is this administration has obstructed the Epstein file release, has done everything it can to protect Donald Trump, and that is, frankly, real guilt by association.
Well, you're seeing very powerful people, John, going down. As you said, they're going down quickly in their professional lives and their political lives, in
Look,
England,
Wexner.
in this country
Look
as
at
well.
Wexner.
I mean, as you're well aware.
Look at Wexner. Wexner's a great philanthropist. He's done great things over the years. I've met the Wexner family on numerous occasions. And what is happening now is really a tribute to Pam Bondi's incompetence as Attorney General of the United States. And I want to remind everyone, all the files could have been released immediately without bipartisan congressional action if the President of the United States had so ordered. There is something rotten in this whole process, and eventually, I hope we will know the truth.
I mean, I don't know. I agree that she's incompetent, but she's been clear-headed about trying to cover for Trump. And
of course,
this is really what the entire administration is dedicated to. But what is happening with the release of the Epstein files is you're seeing that Steve Bannon was all over Epstein like a bad smell, too. And you saw the connections between Epstein and so many who were ready to help him out, Lutnick among them, who said,
Lutnick,
I never wanted to
point out a powerful member of the Trump cabinet who has been proven to have lied about his connection with Epstein. And all these things are true. You know what is very disturbing to me? When there is so much material showing the corruption that is part of this administration, it's too much for people to cover. It's almost overwhelming. It is overwhelming, not almost. It is overwhelming. So my answer to you is that this is just a tip of the iceberg. Clearly, the Trump administration and Donald Trump are trying to cover things up. Eventually, it will come out. And that, by the way, is hurting him tremendously now as we approach the midterm elections. He may not be on the ballot, but the chief of staff to the president of the United States has said she wants people to really put Trump on the ballot. Vote for Republicans because you support Trump. They're not going to get that kind of response. And I think that's a good thing for America.
Yeah, he at some point, as you said, sort of maybe that toxicity, that stink gets onto him.
It's on him.
Yeah. It is amazing, though, that the information that comes out of the Epstein files that has made it across the ocean to Europe has brought down so many powerful men, even those who are adjacent to it,
And yet in this country, no longer a prince.
In this
Look
country,
what happened to Prince Andrew's wife, who is now losing her charities because of all of this. And
but in this country, the head of state has not paid a price yet. It wouldn't seem. I want to ask you about Iran. The United States has now positioned these aircraft carriers, major pieces of hardware off
the Abraham Lincoln and the Gerald R. Ford.
The Gerald R. Ford, I'll remind everybody, was off the coast of Venezuela and was very much involved in that Venezuelan military operation. There's been, by the way, another interdiction, or whatever we want to call it. 11 people were killed in a bombing of a, quote, drug boat. But let's put that to the side. It's just I think the U.S. is really out of control with these military flexes. These are war crimes by any yardstick. But let's leave it to the side for a moment. And tell me what's going to happen in Iran. It looks, with all that hardware around Iran, it looks like some kind of military move is imminent.
That's what I think. All my friends in intelligence tell me the same thing. You can't move that much hardware in and not do something. Let me point out the Iranians are being very resistant to any compromise. And what really is at the bottom line here is that all the military power in the world, what you really want to do is to see regime change in Iran. Remember, we have had experience with regime change in Iran. We, the United States and Great Britain, changed regime with Mossadegh back in the 1950s. We saw the regime change when the Shah...
Mossadegh was elected by the people, wasn't he, John?
Yes, and he was supported by President Harry Truman.
So it was an odd thing we did when we installed the Shah.
It was British Petroleum who came to the Dulleses, and it's very clear what happened. And Eisenhower acquiesced. He was brand new in the presidency. I don't think he understood the implications. But look, the simple truth is no one supports the mullahs in Iran. The people of Iran don't support the mullahs. The problem is, what do you do to replace the mullahs? And let me say a word about
and who's in the wings waiting. It's an odd thing you'd mentioned the
Reza Pahlavi.
Yeah.
And let me explain that I interviewed him twice on KGO. Once when a book came out, and once when I just was interested in talking to him. Now they're saying, well, he could be the interim head of government, and that's what he's saying. He's saying, look, there needs to be regime change. I'm willing to be that interim person. I don't know if the Shah is acceptable or not. But I can tell you, or the Shah to be, but I can tell you that there is no doubt in my mind that if there were a free, fair election in Iran, the mullahs would be out in a minute. But remember what has happened. The Revolutionary Guard, which really is the army that keeps the mullahs in power, is completely loyal to them. And it will be a very interesting thing to see what happens if America intervenes. What does that mean for the future of Iran? And I talked to a very good friend of mine who calls himself a Persian. If somebody says they're a Persian, they don't support the mullahs. And his answer was, you understand, John, there will be a reflex reaction if America attacks Iran. Even those of us who oppose the mullahs will back Iranian independence. We don't want to see Iran become a vassal state. So this is another, like Venezuela. Let me just point out the similarity.
Right, exactly.
The difference is that Venezuela had no army, no ability to resist. Iran does. And they produce missiles which have the ability to hit targets. They've demonstrated that. So
wouldn't an American attack on Iran be greeted with an attack on Israel?
It's very possible that would happen, and the Israelis are geared up for that.
So those missiles you're talking about, I'm just saying, wouldn't they be trained on Israel?
They might be, but you know where else they're going to be trained? On bases in the Middle East that have American forces present. And remember, there in Qatar, for instance, we have a large American military presence. That's a hop, skip, and a jump from the Iranian missile sites. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of pieces in play. May I quickly point out to you that we not only confront this problem with Iran, we confront a problem with Ukraine. And I want to make this very clear because I'm very distressed by what's happening. While talks are going on in Geneva, what is happening is that the Russians are attacking Ukraine, Kyiv, and other major areas. They're devastating them with drone attacks and missile attacks. So one of the things that we're doing now is juggling a two-front potential war in which we would be directly engaged. And so I point this out because what you have now are Steve Witkoff, who is handling negotiations, along with Jared Kushner, neither one of whom, in my mind, have much credibility, handling all of this. And where is Marco Rubio? I want to tell you, Marco Rubio was at the security conference in Munich. And did you hear what came out of that? The idea from the Europeans that they can't trust America anymore, that there is going to be a new order in the world. You all must understand that the reason there has been whatever stability there has been is because of NATO. And the fact that this president is continuing to subvert and to attempt to disarm NATO is one of the greatest disasters in American political history. Marco Rubio, by the way, has announced, just so everyone's clear, he's not running for president. He will support J.D. Vance, who, by the way, said just last week that America is a Christian nation. Very interesting. But it's important to note that a ticket of Vance and Rubio from the Republican point of view would be a very, very strong ticket. And that may be what the Republicans are heading for. So I'm raising all these things because it all fits in context to your question about Iran, about Ukraine, about what's happening in Europe.
Well, the one thing I would suggest, and you, I think, rightly identify Witkoff and Kushner as rookies, essentially, with no cultural understanding of the relationships here that go back decades between the West and Russia, et cetera. They look at everything sort of as a business deal, very akin to the way that Donald Trump looks at everything. These are real estate guys. Witkoff is his golfing buddy. He made his money through real estate. I've talked about this from the very first hours of the administration. And so to have him dealing with Ukraine is just the oddest thing. Rubio, as you say, is sort of in the back seat. But I think what is also relevant that you left out, just because you were covering so much, I think, is that on the Russian side, you now have a negotiator there who is also just a money person. They're also, it would seem, more interested in crafting some kind of deal on the money side. It's sort of a naked oligarchical sit-down is what's going on.
It's disgusting.
And so the people are lost. The people of Ukraine are lost in all of that. I'd suggest that is it's a bellwether moment. It shows you the way in which these various high-stakes negotiations are going to be more concerned with the finances around them and the deals that can be made for the oligarchs than anything else.
I agree. And let's just point out that the Russians have been directly implicated in the murder of Navalny. And this was a European finding. And we're still doing business with Putin, who is a murderer par excellence. So we have to know what we're up against. And we don't have time, I guess, to go into the whole Navalny story, but it's worth...
Well, I mean, they're not the whole story, but I mean, I think the finding was pretty clear that he was poisoned. This is a guy who was a major rival of Putin's, and he was poisoned straight up. So the official story was that he had been walking around the prison yard, wasn't feeling well, collapsed, and, but as it turns out, what?
He was poisoned. And it was very clear that he was murdered, and it was, frankly, an obscure kind of poison. And the Europeans have made the determination. But the bottom line of everything you're saying is we have a president who is completely out of control, and we have a Congress which is not willing to step in. And I think that is one of the real arguments that needs to be made by the Democrats as we approach the midterm elections. And you and I know, in our conversations over the next 10 months, are going to focus completely, I hope, on this question of the balance of political power and what will happen with Donald Trump's executive orders and what the Supreme Court will do on tariffs and what we are talking about here in terms of the future of the United States of America.
Well, that's why I say when I describe the country from an administrative standpoint as listing to one side, I think you're right. There has to be a way to right this ship, and there has to be a way in which Congress begins with some muscularity to rein in a chief executive who is, I agree, running amok. So
can you imagine changing the names of airports and tunnels to Donald Trump just to satisfy his ego? Which, by the way, they don't have the power to do. I mean,
but let me just tell you this, and I've said this, I think I said this in the first few months of his presidency. I wish he was just concerned with putting his name on stuff. I wish. I will give him all the names he wants. It's all the other crap that he's doing.
Oh, it's thoroughly corrupt.
It's moving into American cities with these thugs. It's the loss of First Amendment protections. It's everything he's doing with the destabilization of all the diplomatic relations that have been in place since World War II. It's the complete undoing of the EPA and the destruction of this environment with toxins that we know are so very harmful. It's all of that and the corruption, et cetera. I wish he were just putting his name on stuff, John. That's what my wish would be.
I just want to point out a 66-year-old nanny of Russian origin was arrested here in San Francisco by ICE, subsequently released because of the outcry. But the fact that these abuses of power are taking place in the United States of America are very disturbing. When Abe Ribicoff, Senator Ribicoff, spoke at the Democratic National Convention in 1968 about Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago, who knew that all these years later we would be talking about, and I'm going to be very blunt with you, Gestapo tactics being used in the streets of America now by ICE. And somebody asked me, are you in favor of abolishing ICE? The answer is no. The problem isn't the agency. The problem is the direction the agency has been given.
Well, you may have to shut down the agency, John Rothman, to rebuild the agency. I'm
Well,
sorry. It is
that's
out
not
of control. Out of control.
That is not abolishing an agency.
All right, fine.
It's got to be very clear, because otherwise,
No, I get it.
Republicans will say,
Okay.
"Oh, you see, they don't care about immigration." Well,
Sure.
we
They're
do.
gonna say it anyway. I'm so, the Democrats are so worried about what they're gonna say.
No, they aren't. That's why
get,
they're blasting back.
Yes,
that's
but
why
I'm
you're
just
seeing
saying
what's happening in Texas.
I
But
do
wait,
think you got to talk about ICE. I do think you do have to talk about these things. But I think I think you can be extreme. These people. I believe that as you know, Kristi Noem and her boyfriend Lewandowski, they should be removed. Lewandowski isn't even a government employee. What the hell is he doing? And they're running an organization. They should be impeached, as should Bondi and the rest. That's the rhetoric that I'd like to. In fact, I'll play some Ossoff stuff. He's so very good with this very rhetoric I'm talking about.
The only way there is an impeachment of any kind is if the Democrats control the House of Representatives, and if the Democrats had 67 votes.
It's a political exercise. It will likely never happen. But I think you can begin the proceedings because it starts the dialogue. It gets it into the zeitgeist.
If the Democrats control the House, that's exactly what will happen. And the sooner, the better. We're in a really extreme situation where we have to respond effectively, and we have to understand that the federal government, including the Department of Justice, which I would prefer to call now the Department of Injustice, has been mobilized against the forces of right and truth in this country. I always remember truth, justice, and the American way. It doesn't exist in the Trump administration.
Well, you remember truth, justice, and the American way because it was about who? Superman.
Absolutely.
Superman. Where is Superman? I'm asking you. Superman.
I don't know, but you look
Tony
more like
told
Clark.
me before the show started that there is no real Superman. Imagine this. Getting this news like this.
You look more
at my
like,
advanced age, just learning now that there's no Superman. Rothman,
wait. You
appreciate
look
the
more
fact
like
that
Clark
you look like Lex Luthor. Come to think of it, I just realized this,
I was
Rothman.
say, you look more like Clark Kent than I do. And remember, Clark Kent was also a journalist. And so
that's right.
That's shows that you put on every single day,
yes,
which deserve the support of all of our listeners.
Now I feel bad for interrupting you.
I'm complaining right now. I know Kim corrected you on the question of how much money was being paid. I think Kim was at $15 million. I'm now telling you up front, you don't have to pay me $15 million. I'm urging everybody to support the Mark Thompson program because it's the right thing to do.
Wow.
Big shout out.
Big shout out to John Rothman. Find Rothman on his own podcast, the daily podcast of Rothman. Get your dose. It's called Around the Political World with John Rothman. It's wherever better podcasts are found. He's also on thevoicesf.org, thevoicesf.org. Thank you, Rothman. Stay in touch. We'll see you next Wednesday.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.